Oosterhuis here with RealAgriculture.com. We are live in studio. Thank you for joining us again. It's always a great time here on Real Ag Live, and we have an exciting guest for you today. It is a new face to the Canola Council of Canada. So I'm going to bring in our guest here today, and it is Nate Ort with Canola Council of Canada. How's it going?
Good. How are you? Welcome to my apartment.
I know that's the one thing about I mean, you and I both have always kind of worked remotely. That's part of our jobs, but that's one
Yep.
thing with COVID that you see a lot more of people's living rooms. So that definitely
Yeah.
makes makes things interesting. So
Yeah.
Nate, you joined with the Canola Council as of September 15th. You're actually covering mat leave for Angela Brackenreed. So can you tell us a bit about yourself, maybe some past experience, any fun facts you might have?
Sure. Yeah. So, like you said, my name's Nate. You might see Nathaniel some places. That's the full legal name, but for the most part, I go by Nate. I grew up in Carman, Manitoba. I'm not from a farm. I grew up working on farms. Since I was a younger teenager, I grew up working on my friend's potato farm, cleaning sheds, and then from there, after high school, I worked full time on a farm, and that just kind of accelerated my career in agriculture. I guess that's when I found, this is what I wanted to do. So then I went to U of M for a long time, for a couple different degrees, and now I'm here, and I'm excited. I'm pumped.
That's awesome. So previously you have worked with a few different crops. Can you tell me a bit about them?
Yeah, so during university, I was always a summer student with Bayer Crop Science. So at the time, they had the Invigor portfolio. So I was working pretty closely with that in the breeding program and then in market development, doing the field scale trials. And then from there, I was a territory sales assistant. So that was more on the sales side of things. And that was continuing on with the Invigor portfolio, but also with crop protection products that they offered at the time. And after that, I actually went back to school. I'm just finishing up a master's in plant science, and that's focused more on, or it's focused on soybean and phenology. So growth stages and what affects soybean crop growth and development, and a big focus on day length. They're really sensitive to how much daylight they receive in a day, which can trigger different life cycle events. And then from there, the Canola Council kind of plucked me out of that and threw me back into canola. So I'm up against a bit of a learning curve, working with a new crop, or an old but new to me again crop kind of thing. But I'm excited, and the team here is so great that it's impossible for me not to do well with the support that we have here.
So tell us a bit about what your focus is going to be or has been at the Canola Council and where sort of your territory is.
Yeah, so my territory is eastern Manitoba, anywhere east of Brandon up to Dauphin. That's kind of the geography that we cover. Many of you will be familiar with how the agronomy specialists within the Canola Council have different roles. So Warren Ward, it looks after our fertility kind of portfolio and fertility sides of things. Justine focuses a lot on disease, particularly blackleg and verticillium. And our team leader, Clint, he also focuses on disease sclerotinia, other than trying to keep track of what we're all doing. And so what I'm focusing on, like you said, I'm covering a parental leave for Angela Brackenreed, and her specialty was storage. So I've, kind of inherited that, and that's part of what I'm doing. But I've also taken on the physiology portfolio, and that kind of stems from my master's research and just where my general interests lie is in crop growth and development, and how environment can influence this, and the extremes and the optimal levels of everything. And so that's kind of what I'm most excited for, moving forward in this position.
So you've recently been working a bit on your focus in the last couple months has been hybrid selection. Can you talk a bit about some of the highlights of hybrid selection and the importance of it?
Yeah, so something that's going on this year, or this time of year, if farmers haven't already decided on what they're growing for next year. And super important decision because there's many different things to keep in mind, and what are your priorities, and kind of like how we talked about this, or what we talked about on Friday or Thursday, whenever that was. Your priorities are unique to you, and your operation can be very different than the farm a mile down the road, than your neighbors, and their priorities might be different. So I think it's super important to just keep this in mind. Yeah, they're growing that, but that's good. That's great for them. That's the best choice for them, and that might not be the best hybrid for you or for your farm or for even particular fields. So yeah, I think that's the most important thing, is just identify your priorities, and then from there, that's when you start the decision-making process.
So yes, like you said, it's really important to not compare to your neighbors. How do you actually look at your own farm and know what you need?
Yeah, so we kind of went through an example of a bunch of different priorities last time we spoke. So one of the big things, I think, is herbicide rotation. So what herbicide group do you want to be spraying on your canola crop? What herbicide group are you spraying on your other crops? Like what we know that increasing herbicide groups, like increasing that rotation, is good to mitigate weed resistance to these herbicides. So, expanding this herbicide rotation to as many groups as possible is important. So that's, I think that's one of the key priorities that every grower should be keeping in mind. From there, you can look at harvest management. So are you wanting to straight cut your canola and therefore growing a pod shatter tolerant hybrid? Or are you swathing? So maybe this pod shatter tolerant trait hybrid isn't quite as important to you. Or maybe you're swathing a pod shatter tolerant hybrid. Lots of growers will grow that for topography reasons. The top of the, if there's lots of topography variation within your field, the top of the hill might be mature earlier than the bottom. Same with sand ridges. And now if you're going to swath, you can let those matured spots sit there for a bit without, that risk of shattering. And then of course, disease resistance is always huge. We've gone out this fall, we've clipped stems, we've scouted, we've sent in samples to labs. We know what's in our field. I know everybody's doing that. So now moving forward, what hybrids do we grow to keep these disease levels low? And for me, those are the most three important things. But of course, like I said before, these priorities are unique to every farm.
Absolutely. So we have a question coming in here from Dorian, and he says, what is the main disease in canola in your region specifically?
In my region specifically? Wow, that's a hard question. Blackleg is always a yield robber for, or has been a yield robber in the last couple of years. So that's always of importance. Also, sclerotinia in the Red River Valley can be pretty prominent on wet years. Disease pressure can be high. So, I don't know if there's any, each year can be different. And we can answer this question by scouting.
Absolutely. So back to kind of talking about hybrids here and hybrid selection. Can you talk about why producers may want to look at a different hybrid? Because, maybe they grew one last year that worked for them, but it's still important to shake things up.
Yeah, always important to shake things up. And, the fact is hybrids are not on the market forever. So even if you like growing the same hybrid year after year after year because it consistently is yielding well, it's not going to be available, for 20 years. So it's important to kind of stay ahead of that because you are going to have to make this decision as to what hybrid to grow eventually. So, to always kind of keep that back in the mind, like, oh, what are we going to grow next? What have we grown? How do they compare against each other? And that's why also the Canola Council encourages to grow more than one hybrid, to be planning ahead, to be, just comparing different genetics on your farm because, and in your environment, because genetics respond differently depending on the environment that they're grown in.
So what sort of resources does the Canola Council have available when it comes to actually selecting these hybrids?
So the Canola Council itself, we administer the canola performance trials, and those are small plot and also field scale variety comparison trials. We have like a pod shatter tolerant lineup of trials, and then we have the conventional swath trials, and we have different herbicide programs that these are sprayed in. So, that's an excellent resource. If you look up, the results on our website for that, and find your environment or somewhere close by, I think that's like super important to keep in mind. As a farmer from Carman, shouldn't be looking at results from, a canola trial in Lethbridge, because those are totally different growing environments. So that's always something to keep in mind. But, also like lots of local retails, lots of life science companies have trials in your area, and they're doing a really good job of conducting these trials and promoting them. As long as we're paying attention to proper experimental design, that's going to make some eyes roll. But it's important that, these aren't just a strip versus a strip. There needs to be replications, and the more years of data for one hybrid, the better. So what if hybrid X performed this well in 2017? How did it do in 2017 and 2018? How about 2019? How about 2020? Like, that just makes the data more robust when it's tested over many years.
So how do you recommend farmers keep track of their data? Because that's a big part of it is understanding that if you're going to look years ahead or years previous, you have to have that information available. So how do you recommend if a farmer's coming to you and say, how do I keep track of this? What do you tell them?
Yeah, so I'm a big on-farm experiment advocate. I love on-farm testing, and the farmers that enjoy doing this kind of stuff, like they're super curious, they're eager, and they want to. And these trials take time, and they're not for everybody, and that's fair. But I think the best way to determine if a hybrid or a crop protection product or even a practice, let's put fertilizer with the seed a little bit more this year than we did last time. So testing it out on your farm with your equipment is the best way to determine if this practice or hybrid or crop protection product is right for you. And then again, just going back to experimental design, testing it properly. There's lots of amazing on-farm networks out there. Those who are familiar with Manitoba Pulse and soybean growers on-farm network, Megan Burns does a tremendous job with that program. I only have good things to say about it. So running on-farm trials like they're doing, that's the best way to figure out what's right for your farm.
Absolutely. So we have a comment here from Lara. She says, I really like that you pointed out experimental design and significant differences in that canola school episode, Nate. Those A's, B's, and C's are important. Do you want to expand a bit on that for anyone that didn't get a chance to watch our latest canola school?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things is to, actually, are there actually differences between the results that are being presented to me? Or is it a bar graph, with just numbers, and you're like, oh, okay, that one yielded 55, that one yielded 56. Are those two hybrids actually different in yield, or is that one bushel, is that just random? Is that just a random source of error that led to this? So that's where things like the A's and the B's and the C's are important. ABCs are important. We grow up learning our ABCs, and now you get to learn it for stats. So those are what we call the letters of significance. And if you see a bar graph and two of those bars have the same letter, that means that statistically those two bars were the same, even if their values are different. They yielded the same. And now if those are two different letters, so if it was an A and a B, then those yielded significantly different. And there's other ways of looking at this too. You can look at LSD values. One of my friends prefers LSD values over letters of significance. Personally, I don't. I think it means that I have to do more math. But what you do is the least significant, or the LSD value, and you compare. So if the LSD value is 5, that means any result, that is 5 over or under is significantly different from what you put that 5, what you calculated that against.
And for anyone watching, you can probably tell Nate really enjoys statistics and somehow makes them interesting. My eyes did not glaze over, so it's always good that way. So looking forward to next year, can you talk a bit about what you might be working on with the Canola Council as far as trials go?
Yeah, so I mean, I just went on a huge rant about on-farm networks and on-farm testing. And the Canola Council at this point, we don't have an on-farm network, but that is something that I'm, I'm trying to advocate for within our organization. But it's something that you can do quite easily, anyways. And on our website, I don't think they're up there yet. We're going to have sample protocols that you could go up and you could look at, and adjust for your farm and say, oh, I've always wanted to test this, but I just didn't know how to do it properly. And so that's when you would consult, these protocols, these examples. And you could email me, you could call me, and I would be more than willing to help you design this. But they do take work, like I said before. So they're not for everybody. So I'm excited, to try to kind of encourage that in the canola world. And then I'm also really excited to dive into physiology in canola. It's not something that I've been exposed to a lot just because of my recent years in soybean physiology. But really excited for canola and to see what research has been going on, what research still needs to be done, because as we know, research is never ending. And yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting everybody, to working with farmers again. The last couple of years, I've been working on a thesis. I've been stuck in a lab, so it's just going to be out there again.
Absolutely. So you obviously spent a fair amount of time with soybeans as you have canola. As far as diseases go, is there any like root rots or diseases that cross over between the two?
Yeah, so sclerotinia crosses between the two. And in soybean, we actually call it white mold, but it's the same disease. So that's actually really important to keep in mind for rotation purposes. So, if you think that you're rotating to soybean to reduce sclerotinia levels, that might not be always the case. That being said, soybean is, there's a lot of crops that are susceptible to sclerotinia, to that pathogen, and soybean is pretty low on the list of susceptibility. So, not a huge concern, but definitely something to keep in mind when you're planning your rotation, when it comes to thinking about disease mitigation and what cultural practices we can incorporate there.
So getting into diseases a bit more, obviously clubroot is a big one with canola. Can you talk a bit about what your guys' messages are around clubroot and how you might work towards mitigating some of it, like as far as biocontrol, stuff like that?
Right. Okay. So, the first thing that I like to talk about when it comes to diseases is you got to get out there and scout. You need to know what is in your field. That is step number one. Step number two, identifying. So proper identification. If you're going out there to scout for clubroot, update yourself on what to look for. There's lots of great pictures out there, but also be on the lookout for other diseases too. Look out for blackleg. Look out for verticillium stripe. Look out for sclerotinia. And don't go out to your field specifically looking for one disease. Keep an open mind and get out there and scout.
Absolutely. So, what's one thing you might be? So, we've talked about kind of what your wheelhouse is going to be. What's something you might want to look at that you maybe don't know a ton about?
Oh man, everything. Yeah, no, I'm really interested in heat blast in flowering canola, and I know that this has been looked at before out of by physiologists across Canada. I know that our comms manager is working on an article right now, but it seems to be a common theme in the last couple of years that there's some pretty intense heat and maximum temperatures that we're experiencing in Western Canada while canola is flowering. So that's kind of something that I want to dive into a little bit more. There has been lots of work done in the area, like I've said, but sometimes translating that research and the key findings to what can we use boots on the ground, like what does this actually mean? That can take a little bit more work. So that's definitely that's on my to-do list.
Absolutely. So, I guess not that we really want to talk about COVID, but can you talk about how you will see your job changing going forward? How it's impacted your job?
Yeah, it's actually like a friend was asking me, an hour ago. She's like, "How was starting a new job during COVID?" And my answer was, "I don't really know because I hadn't worked this job pre-COVID." Um,
Yeah.
and there's a couple different things to consider, I guess, within my position. We're a team spread out across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. So we were always meeting virtually. We were already working from home. So, things like that haven't changed. I think moving forward, everybody, and this isn't just the Canola Council, everybody's going to get really creative. This growing season in terms of extension events or competitions. If we're not able to meet safely in large groups of people and deliver extension messaging, we're going to have to figure out what to do. How do we reach everybody? And Justine and myself and Manitoba Canola Growers Association and all the Canola Growers Association, we're thinking hard. And I feel I don't want to give anything away because I'd rather it be a surprise. But I'm excited for what we've thought of, and I think it'll be good.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. If nothing else, this pandemic has got us all thinking on how we can be creative for sure. So I know you haven't been out for the summer yet, but you guys cover a lot of ground. Can you talk about any ideas you were maybe told on how many fields you would visit in a year?
How many feel as an agronomy specialist? Oh man, I don't even know. I can already hear Justine's voice. If I said, Justine, how many fields did you look at in a year? She'll be like, lot.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, there's no way that I have a value on that, but I can tell you that I am looking forward to coming out to your field and to meeting you.
Awesome. That's great to hear. So, can you talk a bit about what the Canola Council is going to be looking at next year, or what your guys' main focuses are, or can you not really speak too much on that yet?
Yeah, so we do have like every year we determine 5 key agronomy messages, and we just kind of finalized them the other week, and I don't even have them in front of me, but I know that one for sure is plant stand related, one is disease related, one is choosing the right hybrid. That was assigned to me. That should have been the first one I remembered probably. Um, there's always a fertility one in there too. So those will be coming out shortly, and I probably should know them by heart, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for not.
Oh no, it's fine. So as an agronomist, you guys deal with so many different things. One of them being weeds. Can you talk about which is your most despised weed you see, whether it was in soybean fields or in canola fields?
My most despised weed. Um, it's an interesting question because I think if you asked a farmer this, their most despised weed would be, the one that reduces the most yield. And when I think of my most despised weed, I can just think of which weed have I had to pull out the most out of plots because a herbicide didn't work or herbicide wasn't even applied. And I don't even know how many lamb's quarter plants I've pulled out in the past 5 years, like so many. And those days when you forget gloves and your hands are just bloody at the end of the day, like that isn't fun. So at least despise weeds, but probably not for the reason that you were asking.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that I think a lot of farmers can relate to because we all deal with them. Absolutely. So, what else can you tell me about yourself or about your position that you really would like a farmer to know? Whether it's maybe something they don't know about the Canola Council or something about yourself.
Man, that's a good question. Like, I've opened to this, and like I said, I'm not from a farm. My immediate family does not work in agriculture at all. My mom's a retired minister. My dad's a retired teacher who mostly worked in daycares. My sister works in social work. My brother's a chemical engineer. And it wasn't until I was working, full time on this farm right after high school that I really found this love for agriculture. And me and one of my best friends, we decided that we'll go to school and we're going to go through the diploma program at U of M because we had heard nothing but good things about it. So, we did that, and I met lots of incredible people. I can't even begin to tell you, the friendships that I made that are still on today. I know that Corey Elliott is watching this, and he'd be pissed if I didn't mention his name. So, hey, Corey. And and from there, I realized like I didn't really like high school that much. And when I was in the diploma program, I realized, wow, like learning and writing papers and doing these little labs is actually really interesting when you're studying what you love. And I think that's when the flowers started to open. Maybe I don't know if that's a proper and a good analogy. And from there, I went into a degree program. Really liked that, and again met lots of incredible people, lots of great profs, lab instructors, TAs, peers. And I think it was about halfway through my degree program, Don Flayton pulled me aside and he said, Nate, I know your uncle. My uncle worked at the University of Manitoba, and he said, I found a connection. I found your connection to agriculture. And for those that don't know Don Flayton that well, he has connections everywhere. Like he can connect this person over here to that person over there. I'm pretty sure that this happened twice, that people met in his course and are now married. It could be three, but at least two. So he's like, Nate, I found your connection. And it turns out that my uncle, who he knew, or who he knows, his wife, her father was a professor of soil science. He was a department head. He called Dr. Headland. Don called him Doc Headland. And for me, I think that was like one of my most solidifying moments in agriculture. That was like, oh, you finally have this connection. And that just rounded everything off, I think, at that point. And I felt maybe more at home. It was always the envy of the farm kids that the town kids had, is that we didn't have like this super strong direct connection to agriculture. And once that happened, it was like, oh, I'm home.
Absolutely. But I mean, good for you for still going after it, because I know there's a lot of people that they still think to this day, if I didn't grow up on a farm, I can't be in agriculture. So I guess my question to you is, what would you say to that town kid to encourage them to look into agriculture if they've never maybe considered it?
Um, they've never considered it. Agriculture is also biology. And if you're super interested in biology, if you like watching plants grow, if you like watering, if you like to not water them as often to see what happens, if you like to water them more often and see what happens, that's a pretty big key indicator, I think. There are so many jobs in agriculture. How many students go through either the diploma or the degree program and then go back to the farm? There's still tons of agronomy roles. There's still tons of roles in agricultural finance, policy, commodity groups, life science companies. There's so much to be done out there. So like definitely encourage anybody even thinking about agriculture to just explore it a little bit. And there's resource programs out there too. U of M has a good kind of recruitment program, and I'm sure U of S and U of A and University of Guelph do as too, and all the other colleges and universities and institutions that I've missed. So I would encourage you to reach out there, or even reach out to me, and I could point you in the right direction, or we could have a phone call.
Absolutely. Or you could be in communications as well. Ag communications is a
Exactly.
thing.
There's so many different like facets within agriculture. I think, and even talking to, I have a lot of friends that aren't involved in agriculture at all. And, I'll be talking to like, oh, my friend Mac Ross works for Pulse Canada and he does this. And they're like, oh, people actually do that in agriculture. Like, yeah, it's super important.
Absolutely. Well, we are unfortunately out of time. That half an hour went by super, super quick again.
Yeah.
For any of you that would like to hear more of Nate, we recently did a canola school on choosing the right hybrid, so be sure to check it out. Thanks to our sponsors, BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola. They sponsor our canola schools, and you can find them by going to www.canolaschool.com, and I'm sure you'll see Nate as well as some of the other agronomy specialists back on there soon. We like to chase them down. They're very knowledgeable people. So thank you very much for your time, Nate. It was great having you on the show.
Great. No, thank you so much.
And I'm for those of you that are still tuned in here, please check out RealAg Radio at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time or 4:30 Eastern. Sean Haney will have the top ag news stories for you today, as well as a full agronomy show, as it is Agronomic Monday. So be sure to check it out on Rural Radio 147 on Sirius XM. Or if you don't have SiriusXM, we do publish the show on our site as well. You can download it to listen later, wherever you get your podcasts. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you guys soon.